It's so nice to see you. Thank you for being here, Keith Knight.
Oh, it is my pleasure to be here. Virtually at least, virtually.
You've had a big week. You said that this was the last week of the writers' room for season 2 for Woke.
Yeah, yeah, and I should be working on my script right now. Um, but yeah, it is the last week of the writers' room. It will continue. I'll continue to write. I'm working on episode 8 right now, and yeah, but you just keep on writing. You keep on revising the scripts and making them better and taking notes and all the way up. All the episodes are going to be tweaked up until we shoot them.
Oh my god, that feels very collaborative and fun and contemporary.
Yeah, it's such the opposite of sort of what I do as a cartoonist, right? You just
Mhm.
sit by yourself and control absolutely every aspect of it, and so it's a great balance to work by yourself, but then also have this whole collaborative aspect. It's like being in a band. It reminded me of when I was in a band with the Marginal Prophets in San Francisco.
I was wondering about that because it does seem like you've sort of existed in a bit of a solo creator and creative vibe for a long time, but you do have experience in a band, and so is there a bit of a crossover between band and TV creator, co-creator?
Oh, totally, totally. Yeah, I mean, the best thing about being in a band and about this TV thing is you come with ideas, and then people add to them and hopefully it creates something that you never would have been able to do on your own, and just it's so much more layered and textured and different than what you had expected it to be in your head, and hopefully that's a great thing. Um, and so much has happened with the show that like added so every time we had someone new jump onto the project, it just got better and better. Whether it was Lamorne, that plays the character inspired by me, or Mo Marable, who's the director, and he was the one that decided, like, when we do the animation, I don't want to do flat 2D stuff. I want to do puppetry, and I think the puppetry like made it so much more like surreal and interesting. So it's just when that stuff happens, and the music and the writers and everything. It's really fun.
Oh my god, I love the show so much. I just think it's really brilliant, and but like particularly I think in the first season, one of the earlier episodes where there's like a real breaking point where Keith picks up the garbage can that's been talking to him and he throws it against the gentrified barbershop window, and I think that was the moment where I was just really like, I am in this forever. Like this is a world that I want to explore so desperately with this character, and all of the people in his life.
Excellent. Actually, when I pitched the show, like that was one of the scenes. I was just like, I just want a scene where, it's a parody of Do the Right Thing. And he throws it and throws the garbage can and it bounces off the window. Like that was, to me, watching that scene being made, I was like, yes, this is exactly that. That's one thing where it's like, it's exactly how I pictured it. But just watching Lamorne slink off, sort of embarrassed by it, is like, that's when it's the special sauce that someone else adds to the stuff. So
Yeah, I was really curious for you because, obviously I think it was your first writer's room last year. And so what has been sort of the biggest change for you going from a first season writer's room to a second season writer's room?
I think it's night and day. Like, it's for someone who's never been in had this experience. Like, there's no master class. There's no you know instruction manual that will substitute actually going through it. And so that was, it's trial by fire. And I think the first writers' room, it was put together. I didn't have much input with it, um, but this time around, I felt like I had a bit more input as to who would be in there, and just having the experience of knowing the process of it really helped. And so it's a lot. You feel a lot more assured when you see the scripts going when from when they're first written to the amount of revisions it goes through to get to that place. Like, you know, if it was if it was the same time as last year, I'd be like really nervous, going, nothing's done. But this time around, it's definitely a lot. I shouldn't say easier, but just uh, I'm not as freaked out.
Fair, yeah. So as co-creator, like, are you on set in because you film in Vancouver?
We filmed in Vancouver last season, but we're not filming this season in Vancouver, and
Oh, okay.
there were a lot of different reasons why. But some of it were the protocols, and if we want to fly somebody up, they'd have to quarantine for a couple of weeks, and just there were a few different issues like that sort of made it difficult. But the good thing is we're going to be able to actually, hopefully, if all goes well, shoot some in San Francisco, which is, it's supposed to take place in San Francisco. So that's going to be a good thing.
Yeah.
But uh, yeah, like I was in the writer's room. I was on the ground for prep in Vancouver. I was on the set. Everything from, obviously I did the comics for the character, drew all the artwork, but pitching alternative jokes, scouting different possible shooting locations, and picking out costumes. And I got to be in episode 7. I was the koala. That's the big Easter egg. I got to dress in the koala uniform outfit and punch my character. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, the comic shop, or at least like the facade of the comic shop, is just down the street from where I live, and it's pretty popular Vancouver haunt, right? Like,
That neighborhood's great, by the way, and
yeah,
yeah, I totally dig that comic book shop. And yeah, I mean, it's a shame we're not able to shoot there again, but like we've sort of, uh, I don't know, there's certain things that in the show the pandemic has affected. So you know, like there were things there were a lot of small businesses that didn't recover from the pandemic. And so that factors into the show. So,
yeah. I was wondering because you finished shooting the first season just before the pandemic shut everything down, right?
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, how like what have been some of the challenges around making season 2 in the pandemic?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because, thankfully, Zoom came to the rescue for a lot of things, right? So,
Yeah.
this Zoom room was we did. I haven't even met haven't met most of the writers. I've not seen them in person. I'm in
Yeah.
North Carolina while most of them are in Los Angeles, and I think we have one in Chicago. So, but I mean, it's something we had to do, and I think it's going to open things up. So if someone can't come in from Morocco or or London, you know, uh, maybe they'll be able to do the Zoom room on you know over online. Um, but I haven't, I fly out to set in a few weeks, and so that's where I'll see if there's any, how much it's changed. I just
Yeah.
know that my family can't come to visit, unfortunately, on the set. They're going to come to visit, but like they just can't be on set. Uh, it's going to be really tight, and yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how things change. But we're not we're not writing the show in in the pandemic. No one's going to be in masks.
Okay.
unless they're
Yeah.
on the bus, because there were always ladies in masks
Yeah.
on the bus, even 25 years ago when I was in San Francisco. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah. That's the thing that people always said, like, so you shot it in January and February of 2020, yet you have somebody with a mask on the bus. And I said, yeah, like I said when we were putting it together, I said, there's got to be someone with a mask on a bus. There's got to be, always.
Yeah. I completely agree. There's always, yeah, masks have definitely existed in Vancouver as well, all over the place, well before we were all masked. And you know what? I haven't had a cold in a year and a half, and I
Yeah,
feel pretty good about that.
yeah, yeah. I would say that's the thing that I think uh, is gonna really change. Is a lot more people are gonna wear masks. But I just remember the old Chinese ladies catching the bus. They would have their masks on and they would elbow you to get onto onto the bus before you got on, which was really there was something charming about that.
I
Come
love an
mess with
elbow
them.
to the rib. It's great. You gotta get your seat and you gotta get on. It's perfect. One of the things that you talked about, like in the reading that I was doing to prepare for this, is like talking about sort of the commodification of woke, and like that being something that you were hoping to explore in season two. I'm not asking for spoilers. However, I'd love to get some of your thoughts around sort of like, yeah, that capitalism co-opting, equity and justice movements.
Yeah, it's one of those things where yeah, I don't want to give stuff away, but the same thing is happening that happened to us last season, which is we shot the show, we finished it in February. And then when George Floyd went down and like all these protests and everything was going on, I was like, I texted everyone, I said, over the next month, our season is just going to play out before us. And, and every week someone is posting something in the news that is totally that we've done for season two. So it's a matter of hopefully, the timing's not going to be where people say, oh, they just copied this from this. But like we literally wrote it before we start hearing it come back to us. But yeah, I mean, that's the question is sort of the commodification of woke when you see all these companies, co-opting the movement and hanging out their flags. Like, what are the real changes? What are the real changes are they doing? And also just as an activist, like, is it okay if an activist gets a deal with a car company to sell cars? Like, is it do you have to suffer to be an activist, or can you be,
Yeah.
have money and be an it's all very interesting and muddy and murky. And yeah, hopefully season two gets into that pretty deeply.
Yeah. I mean, I you have been documenting police brutality for decades, like
Yeah.
over 2 decades. Via and I mean, particularly to do it through cartooning and to sort of inject humor into, this obviously like horrific and ongoing practice. Like, I mean, I would assume nothing surprises you anymore.
uh yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, no, I don't know what to
Yeah.
say. Nothing surprises me, and everything sort of plays out. Everything that's happening now has happened for the past 150, 200 years. It's just under a different guise, under a different name. Um, you know, there have been people talking about this, working against it. There have been studies done by the government about this. There have been people fighting it. Just, I mean, I'm in the South now, and just we're watching school districts or politicians trying to prevent uh, the history of race and in this country. They don't want it taught in schools,
Yeah.
and it's very similar to after the Civil War. The Daughters of the Confederacy would get onto the school councils of all the schools districts in the South, and they're the ones who prevented the history of slavery and what happened in the civil. They're the ones who basically got the textbooks to say it was all about states' rights. It had nothing to do with slavery. And like literally, there are people I know who that's what was taught to them.
Hmm.
And it's crazy, it's insane, but it's happening again with the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa, Oklahoma uh, uh, riots, and the the governor is signing, we don't want our kids to feel uncomfortable learning anything in school, so we're not going to teach them this. It's absurd. It's crazy.
Well, and I remember a lot of people feeling like the sort of some internet reaction of being like, this is the first time we're hearing about Tulsa, uh, because of oh my god, the TV
Watchmen.
show Watchmen,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
like that was like the first time a lot of people had ever known, like people didn't think that was real until,
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, and there's it's even deeper than that. The kid that's watching the movie at the beginning in the little movie theater, he's watching. I'm totally forgetting the guy's name. The lawman in that
yeah,
movie is actually who the Lone Ranger is based on. But of course, they're not going to make the hero black, so they made him white. But it's based on that character that is in that movie, and the irony of that being the fact that uh, then they had a character in that in Watchmen be white like later on, and it was based on somebody black back in the day. It was very, very smart and complicated and interesting, and hopefully it turned people onto it. But I have people who think they know better who sit there and go, so why don't black people just get together and create their own communities? And I say, if you knew anything about your history, about the
yeah,
history of this country, they did, and white people got mad and murdered everybody and burnt it down. Like, and then I'd name off all these things. It's people show their own ignorance, about history, because they learn fairy tales. They learn fairy tale history.
yeah, and I mean, I feel like history books are so interested in erasing what actually happened in order to perpetuate that fairy tale. I
Totally.
mean, we see that with like settler colonialism and sort of eradicating histories of indigenous people, and I mean, it's over and over and over again this sort of um settler colonial violence is and anti-black violence go hand in hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
anticipate that you would be sort of an educator as well, and you use your art in that way? Because I know that you have presentations about sort of racial history and racism and police brutality, and you take this into different communities and different schools and different places. Did you ever think that that would be part of your work?
I always thought I would be a college professor in my 50s. I don't know why. I just thought it was kind of a cool thing.
Yep.
And it's funny because I live near the UNC campus, and so it's college towns are great because they're like small towns, but with um, they have a lot of art and academics and sports, and like there's a lot of stuff going on in music and all that stuff when there's not a pandemic going on.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't know. I just I always I enjoy presenting to people, and whether I'm educating them or not, I don't, you know, I always knew I wanted to present my work in the context of being in front of a live audience because it's like I just like being I like the energy of being around people and you know I picked the worst job is sitting by yourself in a hole somewhere. um, so I just when I had the opportunity to do the slideshow, I just remember it was Dave Eggers, the writer, came to me and said, he said, you know, you shouldn't just show like your whole comic at the same time. You should show it panel to panel. That way you can, not everybody's reading the comic at different speeds. You know, you can sort of, you know, surprise people with the next panel and let the laughter play out and then, you know, go with the next panel and stuff like that. You can control it. So that was a huge thing for me. That really changed how I presented things, and it just um, I think it was in 2015 with Ferguson, Michael Brown and Ferguson protests that made me say, you know what, I'm going to put together all my police brutality um, cartoons, and I'm just going to explain to people that this has been going on for years. The only reason why you think it's just starting is because everyone has a cell phone. So people are just, you know, white people are seeing it for the first time, but black people have been talking about this forever. And just looking into it and tracing police back to slave patrols, just really putting all the pieces together. So, you know, it'd be amazing. Wouldn't it be amazing if police academies actually taught this stuff? Like, where do you think police come from? Like, that would be the first great thing is where do you think police come from? You know, and I bet you 99.9% of the people have no idea. Actually, the only ones who probably do know where they come from are all the white nationalists who are infiltrating police.
Yes.
Like, if there's, I'm not going to make the case for white nationalists, but if there's one thing I'll give them credit for is they know they know what the police is for, and they know you know they admit, and I think there were a lot of Americans who don't admit like what police were invented for, and that's to nickel and dime black and brown and poor communities to keep them in check. That's what the laws are for. That's why, you know, a bunch of white people stormed the Capitol and were shocked that there were white policemen fighting them back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like the work that you've been doing, it continues to have I mean, I don't know, I guess like the culture just keeps like reflecting back to you that it's so vital and so crucial. Um but also you know, a tremendous like cost maybe to you. Like how do you keep yourself like I don't know, motivated?
um, well, I mean, thankfully, it, it's not all I do. So it's definitely um, you know helps to uh, have other things to work on and contemplate and having a family, having kids who you know love to play baseball and soccer and just getting involved with that and just and being creative with them. Uh, it helps. You know, I think if I had to stay in it, and there are a lot of activists that do stay in it all 24/7, and
Yeah.
that's really tough. I give them credit because I think the movement wouldn't exist without them, but it takes a toll. I know just racism takes a toll. It's, I mean, you know, they just had a survivor from Tulsa. I think she's like 110 or something like that. Like uh, talking to Congress,
Yeah.
and you
I saw
just
that.
think about she talks about how she was traumatized. Imagine if racism didn't take like the toll it does on the black community. We'd have like 200-year-old black people. White people wouldn't know what to do. They'd be like, oh my God, what do we do? Why are they living so long? We have to do bad things. No, it's just it's amazing just what folks endure and and still thrive, and that's one of the things I talk about when I talk about what what during the slave trade. Just imagine like these people being taken from their home and stripped of everything, and the fact that they survived this cross ocean journey and then are brutally, treated, been beaten and assaulted, and everything taken away from them, but thrive enough to still establish families and learn trades and learn to read and thrive enough that I
Yeah.
exist. And I always say, like, I come from the strongest people on earth, and the fact that I'm here right now, and people need to understand that, and appreciate that, what people have gone through just so I can be here right now. So it's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I also you mentioned about creating with your children, and I noticed that you've done sort of your own press for like a long time. The Keith Knight, sort of your own little publishing house, or well, it's probably like an actual publishing, like
No,
I don't know,
it really isn't.
like it's just a huge epic place. I'm imagining stacks and stacks and stacks of books in warehouses miles long. But you publish your kids' work too, and I was wondering about sort of like uh if you could talk just a little bit about the importance of having ownership and of your voice and your work, and because I think that that's like uh a powerful place for a lot of writers and artists.
Totally, totally. If there's only a few pieces of advice that I tell creators, cartoonists, and writers, which is tell your own story. That's a huge thing. If you don't tell your own story, someone else will do it and they'll get it wrong. And the second is to your own the rights to your work. Like, own your into Hollywood is looking for IP, intellectual property. Like, that's what they're looking for. And so if you compile a decent amount of work, you have what they want. So I tell this story every once in a while. Um, Dark Horse did a 500-page collection of the K Chronicles. That was when back in the day, everybody had wanted a 500-page collection, and it was a nightmare. I don't have any copies of them because they're so heavy, and mailing them out was a nightmare. But I ordered them. I got like 10 of them when I was pitching the show in Hollywood. So I went to HBO, Amazon, Hulu, Showtime, Netflix, and so I pitched a show, and at the end of the pitch, I would stand up and I'd whip out one of these 500-page, they're like old phone books, and I would chuck it up in the air and it would slam on the table really loud. And I'd go, there's your first 10 seasons. And then I would walk out. And when I was in Vancouver and one of the Hulu execs came out, we were at dinner, and he leaned over to me and he said, listen, he goes, I'll always remember when you chucked that giant book on the table and it slammed on the table. He said, that's when you got the show. It's when you slammed that. So there's something to be said about like the drama of of that. But hold on to your rights. That's very important.
Did you I mean, you made that sort of call for yourself a long time ago, and I know that, the as you sort of point out, the paper industry has collapsed and really sort of left a lot of people without jobs and without places to put their work and etc. Um, did you see it coming in 2005? Like, I mean, I guess probably partially you already did, but
Yeah, I was in San Francisco, so I
yeah.
probably saw it sooner than somebody in another part of the country because everything's, technology wise started in the Bay Area. And so I just remember, yeah, I just remember the newspapers getting a lot thinner, and and I remember the tech companies, like the online places, had a lot of money at first, um, and the I remember the copy place I used to go to was frequented by Craig of Craigslist, the guy who
Oh,
started Craigslist.
yeah, yeah.
And so we would see each other there, and when he was just putting together his Craigslist stuff, and you just started to see like, oh, newspapers aren't going to be around anymore,
Yeah.
and the first thing that would go were the alternative weeklies, and once they lost their classifieds, it was just like, ooh. And so yeah, I just remember it was me and my wife, like 2007. And also, I remember like the bands that we were playing with in my band, like they went from being like creative original bands to bad 70s cover bands,
Yeah, yeah.
like really just musicians that would dress up in bad 70s clothes and like butcher decent songs. And we suddenly went from, you know, headlining stuff with other really cool bands to opening for the 70s wacky guys. And it's just like, at some point, it's just like, okay, I have a rent controlled apartment, but nothing else. And it's just like, I don't want to be here 20 years from now and being like that guy going, oh man, San Francisco used to be cool, man, back in the day. So, yeah, so my wife and I just packed up and moved down to Los Angeles. I had always wanted to develop, I only wanted to go to San Francisco for 5 years, use that as my graduate school, move down to LA, develop something for television, and go from there. But I love San Francisco so much. I stayed there for 17 years. I think it was
Oh,
17.
wow.
Yeah. Um, there was a little bit of a delay, but then, but then it worked out down in LA. And frankly, I didn't get the show until I moved to North Carolina. So really, the secret is to move to North Carolina.
That's a great secret, and what a I had no idea that's where we'd end up when we started this conversation. The secret move to North Carolina. I'm glad that you had this vision for your work and what you wanted to do, and that it's happening, and it's so fantastic. And I think that it's very much the fact that like you are so heavily involved in it and you have a good team around you, which is great.
And that's what I'm so thankful for is really everybody involved wants they want my voice to be heard. They want the style and the artwork and the sensibility in there, and that's what I love about it. I think it's just really neat to hear cartoonists say like, how did you manage to keep so much of you in the show, like, like because they said that they've gone through stuff where like, the style gets taken out, a lot of the stuff gets changed and altered and all this stuff, but um they've been really good. Everyone's been really good, great to work with. Hulu and Sony, which is a co-production, and all the producers and writers and stuff.
Do you have this is my very last question. Thank you so much for all your time. But do you have any I don't know, like secret projects in the works in Hollywood that have not actually anything to do with your cartooning?
I do have I know there's nothing in the works, but like I have the next things that I would love to to sell and get out there, and it's similar in the vein of satire, and I think it's fun. I think it's there's some really neat stuff that I would love to do, but I'd also love to do, I would like to do animation, and I think animation, the industry is way more friendly about animation now because you can do it during a pandemic. People don't have to, they can do it in
Yeah.
their homes. Yeah, and um, so there's a lot to come. I can't I can't give anything away right now, but yeah, I hope that there's going to be a lot more to come from me. So yeah, it's a great journey. It's a fun journey.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Keith. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, and I'm just all the best. I am so excited for Woke season 2.
Excellent. Thank you, and thank you know to VanCAF for having me here.